How should we view this diplomatic dispute?
Well, we should view it as a as a renegotiation of U.S.-South Africa relations. Instead of viewing it through the lens of a few events, I would say there's been a culmination of events beginning in last year with the joint naval exercises, and then a ship that came to South Africa, and then later on culminating in an aeroplane from a sanctioned company that landed in South Africa. So that was the climax that kind of constitutes the escalation of events.
Professor, what do you find unusual about these accusations?
We have not been here before between the US and South Africa. What is unusual is that this took place in public. Even during the very testier times between certain administrations in the US and South Africa, there's never been as public of a spat as this one. Certainly, one that culminated into a U.S. ambassador being summoned. This has not happened before, and it is unusual.
So how confident should South Africans be when President Cyril Ramaphosa says he's going to have a commission of inquiry to look into these accusations, especially onto the weapons loaded onto the Russian ship? Should they be confident the outcome will be open and truthful?
I think that would be the optimistic take and the default. However, I would caution the viewers here that in many African countries, including South Africa itself, commission of inquiries are usually used by politicians to buy time. An optimistic look at this is that this will basically buy time also for diplomacy and for cooler heads to reign between the two very important countries and the relations.
Help us understand the relationship between South Africa and Russia.
There are two facets of it. One is historical and symbolic. This idea that Russia helped and Soviet Union helped South Africa and so on and so forth. Current politicians in South Africa usually use this to appeal to the minds, especially in times of shortcomings. But there is another relation. Russia is in the BRICS, and it's a very solid member of the BRICS. And South Africa needs Russia's wherewithal in BRICS to be able to buttress and secure its position for South African business interests and new market shares in places like China and wherever else in the world.
Now, what happens if these accusations turn out to be true? Where do you see the U.S.-South Africa relations?
U.S.-South Africa relations are like a big ship. It takes long to turn, and it cannot be sunk. So they are quite strong. And people-to-people relations are quite strong, stronger than most countries, many countries outside of Africa itself. So I wouldn't be perturbed much about this. There is a context, though. The context is war and the tragic events in Ukraine, and that's the only different variable here. And that's why I look at this as a renegotiation of relations between the two important countries.
Previously, President Ramaphosa has faced some opposition, some saying they're not going to vote him in for a second term. What do you think this new dispute brings to the picture if he's going to run for a second term?
Politicians are opportunistic people. So there might be rivals within the ANC right now, some factions who may be more willing to take an activist approach away from this non-alignment, an activist approach, against Ramaphosa. So he has to look out for himself. But it remains unquestionable, though, that he has consolidated his power since the last Congress.
Do you think Parliament would take a further step into this inquiry about Ramaphosa and what he knows and what he doesn't know about this weapon?
Most of the things that take place in Parliament are determined by a vote in South Africa, since it's a democratic country. And you can trust the outcomes of this vote and what it has to do with Ramaphosa's fate by whether it's an anonymous vote, a secret ballot, or a not-so-secret ballot. If it's a secret ballot, it doesn't favor Ramaphosa very much. If as many votes have gone in times past, if it's an open ballot, it strengthens Ramaphosa's